Nothing in Team Fortress 2 has been talked to death quite as much as random critical hits, except for maybe everything else in the game, that is. We are seriously running out of things to talk about.
Can I take your order?
I'll have a
generic video about the balance of a specific weapon.
How original.
Ooh, I'll also take a generic video about subclasses.
Daring today, aren't we?
There are many videos about random critical hits in Team Fortress 2, most of them written in blistering fury, usually because the YouTuber got hit with the ever-classic random critical hit to Schadenfreude combo. I would just like to point out that I found this GIF on the Five Nights at Freddy's wiki, so yeah, do with that what you will. But in these countless videos about how unfair random crits are, one thing I never hear being addressed is just how unbalanced they are. Squid-Boy, what do you mean? No one talks about how unbalanced they are. Everyone does. They are literally random. Oh, I'm sorry, person I made up, who doesn't exist. I'm talking right now. Being unbalanced is different from being unfair. You see, random crits are random for every class, but they're not as good for every class. Some classes clearly get more advantages from random crits being available than others. Well, that's a stupid thing to care about. No wonder no one's made a video. You know, I created you. I can destroy you too. No! Please! No! Do you guys ever get like too attached to a bit? Then you realize it's not funny, but you spent too much time on it and now you have to include it. So today I'll be using a tier list to rank every single class on how much they benefit from random critical hits. Okay, so starting off F tier, we have Soldier. Now, there's a couple compounding reasons for why I put Soldier in F. Yeah guys, I was joking, it's Spy. I mean, who else could it be? To further understand why I put Spy in F tier, let's go over each one of his weapons individually. Okay, so starting off with the knife. The knife is Spy's main weapon. It's used to get backstabs. It's the one he has out most of the time. It does not get random critical hits. Okay, moving on from the knife, we have the Sapper. The Sapper is used to sap the life out of buildings. While it would be really funny, unfortunately, it does not get random critical hits. Lastly, we have Spy's gun, which fortunately does get random critical hits, for a total of 120 damage. Wow, that's like the damage a real primary weapon does. I mean, sure, 120 damage is a lot, but not for a random crit. Crit pills do 300 damage, crit rockets do 270. But even beyond that, the revolver has a couple issues that make it bad at dealing out random crits. One is that you roll for random crits every time you fire that weapon, and as a spy, you're naturally just going to be shooting your gun less than other classes. You spend most of your time incognito. And the other reason why revolver crits aren't very good is because you can miss. You actually have to aim. I know that sounds like a pretty dumb complaint, but remember, this is TF2. Aiming is a suggestion. But I think more importantly than Spy's random crits just not being very good, Spy has to deal with random crits way more than any other class. You see, melee weapons random crit way more often than any other type of weapon. And it just so happens Spy's three biggest targets, snipers, engineers, and medics, all really like to use their melee to defend themselves from Spy. I am not in any way joking when I say you probably lose a good like 5% of your kills due to random crits as Spy, and it is very annoying. Alright, next up in F tier we have Demoknight. Demoknight has one weapon, it's a sword, and it cannot random crit. Starting off D tier, we have the Scout. The reason Scout is terrible is a little bit less obvious than Spy and Demo, but it mainly stems from his primary weapon. So if we break it down, Random crits do two things. They triple base damage and they remove damage fall off. And the scattergun is, believe it or not, a scattergun. So while you'll still retain more damage over long distances, you're still going to lose damage over distance. The scattergun also does a lot less crit damage than you'd think it'd do. This is because the scattergun boosts damage ramp up. But remember, critical hits are calculated with base damage. So even though the scattergun and the grenade launcher seem to do about the same damage at maximum, the grenade launcher has a much higher crit damage because it has higher base damage. Also, Scout is the only class that can't get a one-shot kill with a random crit melee, so ha! Up next in D tier we have Pyro, and Pyro is in D tier for a very good reason. So yeah, remember the two things random crits do. 3 times base damage, and then they also remove damage fall off. Yeah, Pyro, yeah, he has a flamethrower. He doesn't have damage fall off. He has no range. Even beyond having no range, the flamethrower is also at a disadvantage because it's a sustained fire weapon. I think burst damage weapons are just better for random crits. A crit flamethrower will do 450 damage per second, which means you'll kill most classes in about a third of a second, which is really good, but it is absolutely nothing compared to the 1 frame of the crit grenade. Basically, if you're at 30 health and Gaban above smiles at you and gifts you with a random crit, if you have a burst damage weapon, you'll likely kill the guy giving you trouble, whereas if you have a sustained damage weapon, you likely won't. Starting off C tier, we have the Sniper, and as with most things in Team Fortress 2, Sniper's random crits are a mixed bag. And with this being Sniper, I know exactly what type of bag it is. Sniper being this low down on the list comes from one major weakness. The Sniper rifle doesn't get random crits. You know, because Sniper gets headshot crits, so it'd be unfair for him to get the free crits that everyone else gets every once in a while. Apparently, all of Sniper's random crit value mainly just comes from his melee, because Sniper is really weak in close range. Unless you're feeling lucky. Who needs an SMG when you have glorified gambling? A power class you definitely shouldn't be able to kill is right in front of you. Spin that wheel, baby. Pyro went through hell to break through your team's front line, and is now challenging you at the one range where he has an advantage. Time to gamble. The one class designed to counter you is directly in the range they want to be to counter you. Backstab, how about a luck stab? You get a lot of kills you definitely do not deserve as a sniper when you're using your melee. And in a similar vein, the next person on the list, Engineer, is basically here for the same reasons. Engineer isn't a class designed for direct combat like a lot of the other classes. Because of this, you can get a lot of undeserved kills just by swinging around your funny crit wrench. The reason Engineer is able to just barely edge out Sniper on the list is because his primary weapon can actually do a critical hit. And even though the scattergun and the shotgun do the exact same amount of damage in a crit, I just feel like Engineers is more useful than Scouts. Because let's face it, a lot of times as Engineer, your shotgun is your last resort. You don't expect to be successful in killing a soldier with your shotgun while they're firing on your sentry. So having a 2 to 15% chance of winning a fight that you were definitely going to lose otherwise is actually not too terrible. Starting off B tier, we have the Heavy Weapons guy. Heavy is the first character on the list to have what I would consider really good random critical hits. It is sometimes joked amongst the Team Fortress 2 community that Heavy's random crits are laser beams. Heavies will very often just be firing at people from medium to long range, just peppering them with small amounts of damage. So when all of a sudden that damage gets tripled with no damage fall off, and you die within 1 second, it feels like you just got cut in half with a random laser beam. Earlier in the video, you might remember me saying that Pyro got some points knocked off because his fire method is sustained damage, and that's worse for random crits. And while I do stand by that, let's just say it matters a little bit less with Heavy, seeing as he does over 1000 damage per second with random crits. The main thing that keeps Heavy from being A tier or even S tier is just that at close range, Heavy already does so much damage that random crits will rarely be the difference maker. Oh, you're only doing 500 damage per second instead of 1000? How will you ever survive, you poor thing? Up next in B tier we have Medic. Now Medic's placement might surprise some of you, but remember, this is not a rating on how good their random crits are, just how much they benefit from them. Medic, as most of you are probably guessing, is another melee crit-centric character, but what separates him from Sniper and Engineer is just that he sucks more. You see, in my opinion, using your SMG or your shotgun to defend yourself is usually a better option than swinging your melee and praying for a crit. But I just don't think that's true for the syringe gun. Because of Uber, engaging into a 1v1 situation is a risk you basically never want to take. But if you are backed into a corner and you have to engage in a 1v1, well, you might as well gamble and also get 25% Uber while you're at it. Now, I know for almost certain that number 1 and number 2 are going to be the most heavily debated topics on this video, because I'm pretty sure we all knew going in who the number 1 and 2 were going to be. I just think we had some disagreements on which was number 1 and which was number 2. And so it might be controversial, and it is really close, but starting off A tier, the person who is number 2 in the whole game, Demoman. Demoman has a lot of good things going for him. His crits do absolutely absurd amounts of damage. 300 for a grenade and 360 for a sticky grenade. That's enough to one-shot every class that isn't an overhealed heavy. Plus, as a Demoman, you're often firing in teams, and explosives have very large splash radiuses, so you will very often be wiping 3 or 4 people with 1 crit grenade or 1 crit sticky. Demo has just about everything you could possibly want going for him when it comes to random crits. Finally, we make it to the end, the number 1 class when it comes to random critical hits. Sitting alone in S tier, we have the Soldier. Soldier has everything going for him that Demoman has. He has a single burst damage, large splash radius, critical hit that will one-shot just about every class in the game. Soldier just has one advantage over Demoman, and it's a really big one. He doesn't have to aim. I know that sounds like a stupid thing to care about, but seriously, it's a really big deal, because consistency is king. As a Demoman, I only hit about half of the pipes I shoot, and that's actually a pretty good average. But think about it for a moment. If you're only hitting half of the pipes you shoot, that means you're only hitting half of the crits you get, and half of them are going to waste. And the same is true for the sticky bomb launcher. Half the time you get a crit sticky, it's in a sticky trap that was gonna one-shot everything anyways. It's also kinda easy to avoid crit stickies because they're literally glowing and everyone knows it's a one-shot death, so... Seriously, have you ever noticed that it is almost a legitimately effective strategy just to continually roll for crits as a soldier? You can just aim splash rockets at the enemy team from medium to long distance away, where they're only gonna do like, 20 to 50 damage? They'll kill nobody, but eventually you're gonna get a critical hit and you're gonna kill their entire team. I have seen so many soldiers do this, even if it's unintentional. I have seen so many soldiers get a collective team wipe just from spamming and eventually getting a crit. Just about every time I play Soldier, I have to take a moment to step back because I just killed a bunch of people with a random crit I definitely didn't deserve. It is so easy to kill people with random crits as Soldier. Well, that's the video. It's over. It's done. Here is what the completed tier list looks like, all in order if you'd like to see it. So next time you're in a heated debate with someone over whether or not random critical hits should be in the game, maybe instead of mentioning how unfair they are solely because they're random, you can instead mention how unfair they are because it's very obvious that some classes benefit a lot more from them. I mean, seriously, Soldier and Demo basically get free team wipes every time they get a random critical hit. Compare that to Scout, who might get a decent chunk more damage when he gets a random critical hit. And don't even get me started on Spy, who is probably legitimately better as a character without random crits.